Hi, I'm Lo. If you can hear the sound of the fan, you're gonna have to deal with it because I've had to close all my windows because I have really noisy neighbors. So I'm like sacrificing something for you guys. You're gonna have to deal with this. Also, trust me when I say this, you're gonna wanna grab something to drink because we're gonna be here for a while. I started keeping sketchbooks 7 years ago when I was in my last year of high school, and since then I have been through so many different sizes and brands and paper colors and textures. It's insane. Today I will be going through every single sketchbook that I've ever used. So there's a lot of timestamps. You can skip around if you want to look at a specific brand, if you have certain features that you care about. When I asked on Instagram, I was like, should I do this brand by brand, like sketchbook by sketchbook, or should I do it by the different qualities? And most people wanted the sketchbook by sketchbook, and then I realized I have free will and I can just do both. When I started using a sketchbook, I was 18. I had kind of moved into watching art YouTubers, and there was this one friend I had who had a sketchbook, and when I looked at her drawing in her sketchbook, I was like, whoa, she looks like she's got it figured out. I should probably do this. When I started keeping my sketchbook, it was kind of clunky because I had a perfectionist streak. Still do, but I realized that I really enjoy having one place where all of my art is collected, in a sense where I can just go through and see the progression of my art. Sketchbooks are very personal, so some people don't like showing off their sketchbooks at all. Other people don't mind it. I like doing it, and everyone also has preferences on what they want from their sketchbook, what type of paper they want, what size they like, what kind of cover, and usually it's trial and error. You'll just go through different kind of books until you find something that sticks and that you like. I will be looking down a lot during this video because it feels like I've done a fucking research paper, alright? This is the amount of notes I have. It is still going. I'll be doing this in chronological order from the first sketchbook I ever used and then until now. So, where's the first one? Oh, Christ. Oh no. Alright, there we go. Got it. This is a Pentalic Traveler pocket journal. This sketchbook has quite a bit of water damage. That does not come with the sketchbook. I managed to do that all on my own. This is a 6 by 8 inches. I don't speak inches, hold on. This is a 6 by 8 inches, which is 15 by 20 centimeters. It has 160 pages of 120 GSM paper, and the paper is very white and very smooth. Like, it is, there's not a lot of texture going on. And I got this because the friend of mine that kept the sketchbook, this was what she used, she recommended it, and I went, you know, well, I'll just do whatever she's doing. What can I say? I'm easily influenced. All in all, I did enjoy using it when I was using it, especially because the paper is so smooth. It worked really well with what I mainly used at the time, which was alcohol markers and ink, like just fine liners. I have since thought about repurchasing it. However, it's not really easily available in Norway. I'd have to buy it off of Amazon again, and 120 paper is a bit too thin for me. So I did enjoy it. I don't know if I would have bought it again. I'll also say the pen loop, I attached that myself. It does not come with the sketchbook. Then we move on to Leuchtturm 1917 sketchbooks. I'm holding up two because this is the second sketchbook I ever used, and it is a bit different to the current design that Leuchtturm has for their sketchbooks. This isn't in production anymore. If I had a magic lamp and a genie came out of that lamp and said, 3 wishes, my dear, one of the wishes would be that this comes back into production. Because this version has 180 GSM paper, whereas the current version has 150. I'm not religious. If there is a higher being, please bring this back. This is the current Leuchtturm sketchbook. It's the A5 size, which is 14.5 by 21 centimeters. It has 112 pages of 150 GSM paper. Once again, very white, very smooth paper. This is also the sketchbook that I have repurchased the most times. Take that as you will. I keep trying new sketchbooks. Somehow, always keep repurchasing this. I'll try a new sketchbook, buy another one of these. Try a new sketchbook, another Leuchtturm. Then we have, I should not have placed these at the bottom, the moleskine. Half of the sticker just fell off. I'm just gonna put that back on. This is one of the, if not the most common sketchbook I keep seeing. This is a moleskine large art sketchbook. The dimensions on this is 13 by 21 centimeters. So it's not a traditional A5 size, which is what trips me up every single time. I have used both the medium size and the pocket size of the moleskines, so I will be going through those as well. The paper is the same in all of these, so that's not going to change, but the sizes do change. When I bought this, I actually bought it because I thought this was this size. And I remembered how much I enjoyed working in the moleskine medium size sketchbook. Working in the moleskine. Okay, you know what? This stick is going. Goodbye. If you can't be part of this team, you gotta go. I don't enjoy the moleskine because it's so narrow. Compared to the Leuchtturm, we're working with a bit of extra space on the side. It feels like there should be more space here. There just isn't. For some reason, didn't have the issue when I worked with these ones. I don't know if the dimensions are like slightly different, but like I didn't mind the narrowness when I worked in this. Might be that I'm used to working at like A5 size when I work in this type of sketchbook. When it goes lower, it doesn't matter. The medium-sized moleskine sketchbook is the perfect size for people who like working in small sketchbooks. The pocket gets a bit too small, but this, brilliant. This feels a tiny bit too small. I did use this when I did my 1 week sketchbook challenge, which was nice because then, you know, it was easier to fill this size compared to something like this. But I would not pick this up for like my everyday art practice. The moleskine has 88 pages of 165 GSM smooth ivory paper. The Leuchtturm stark white paper. Moleskine slight like tanned paper. I don't enjoy this. I feel like the tone of the paper might influence the colors that I'm using. Not a fan of it. I do enjoy the paper weight. I am a sucker for thicker and higher GSM paper. So if the moleskine was a traditional A5 size and had white paper, I might have been using this more than the Leuchtturm. At last, I can't get over especially the color and the dimension of the sketchbooks. I just can't. We are jumping slightly out of order right now because I feel like we can just stick to the moleskine. This is a moleskine watercolor notebook, also known as my mortal enemy. This is different than the moleskine watercolor albums, which are landscape oriented. This is a portrait oriented sketchbook. I liked it for exactly 5 minutes. Like I genuinely thought I had like cracked the code, and then I tried using anything that wasn't paint in it and I was like, oh no, what have I done? The moment I tried using markers, fine liners and pencils in this, I realized that I had made a grave mistake. Using a fine liner in this equates to like ripping your skin off with a cheese grater. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. This has 60 pages of 200 GSM cold pressed watercolor paper. I don't know what I was thinking picking up cold pressed watercolor paper when I like smooth paper. I don't know, the rat in my brain took over for a second, I guess. On the Moleskine website, they do classify this as ivory paper. It is not as white as the other white papers. However, if you compare the traditional Moleskine to the watercolor is a lot whiter than the traditional Moleskine sketchbook. So I'd classify this paper as white more than I'd say is ivory, but I do not have strong enough opinions that I'm willing to like die on the hill of what color Moleskine wants to classify their papers as. It obviously takes paint the best because it is a painting sketchbook. However, I like working with markers and pencils, and it's just too textured. When you use thin fine liners, it's a mess. You're trying to write, it feels like you're trying to write on a rock. And when you use pencils, the texture is just way too noticeable for me. It just doesn't work. If this had warm press watercolor paper, it might have been one of my favorite sketchbooks. However, the cold press is just too much of a hassle for me. I don't want to deal with it. Then we have the Royal Talens Art Creation Sketchbook. This is also very common. It's not as common as the moleskine or the strathmore. However, I do see this around quite a bit. This is probably the most affordable sketchbook. It also comes in many different dimensions and sizes and colors of the cover. It has 160 pages of 140 GSM paper. Paper is smooth, however, if you can tell, it is very tan. Like, this is cream colored paper. And if we've learned anything about me, this just this doesn't fly. This doesn't fly with me. It reminds me of when I would use coffee as a child to like tone paper to make a treasure map playing pirates. I can't get over it. I ended up turning this into a trash book, which is where all the ugly drawings I have go to die, because I could not get over the tone of the paper. I could not work with it. With this sketchbook, I also tried to not be as precious as I usually am with my sketchbooks. I realized very quickly that was a bad idea. I hated it. I didn't want to pick it up. Then we have the Strathmore 500 series mixed media sketchbook. This is tried and true and very popular. And it's popular for a reason. It's a very good sketchbook. It has 190 GSM paper, which is a lot thicker than many of the other sketchbooks that we've been through. It has 64 pages. The paper is a bit rougher and more textured than the other sketchbooks, except the nightmare that was the watercolor sketchbook. But the texture isn't necessarily going to interfere with your art. It might like kind of show because it is textured paper, but it's not going to be unpleasant to use. This sketchbook, however, lacks certain things that I kind of feel is essential, or that I really enjoy my sketchbooks to have. It doesn't have a pocket in the front or the back. It doesn't have a ribbon, and it does not have any way of closing it. This is just flopping around all on its own. It's also soft cover. It's very nice and velvety to touch. It does get damaged if you look at it for too long. I don't know if you can see, but there are dents and marks everywhere on this. If you use clamps to keep your pages down, it will leave marks on the cover of the sketchbook. It's also soft cover and doesn't reach past the edges of the paper, so you do risk the edges of your paper getting damaged. If you look at this, the cover kind of sticks out, so you know if something hits against the side here, it's not going to bend the paper. With this, you know, it's all I'm saying is if you want to throw this in your bag, you should probably do a Hail Mary before you do it. And the final sketchbook, and the one that I'm currently using and almost done with, is the hahnemüle. I'm guessing it's German. It's German. It's German. I was right. I have never seen anyone talk about this or use this, which is insane to me. But when I was researching for this video, I've realized that this is like really hard to find for some reason, and I don't know why. I struggled with finding places that sell these. It doesn't have an official store on Amazon or one of the more common places like Americans and other international people shop. This has 80 pages of 190 smooth white paper. I love this sketchbook, but as you can see, there is no elastic. There is no way of keeping this closed, and we know how I feel about that. It has a ribbon. It does not have a pocket. I ended up gluing an envelope in the back here because I like keeping certain scraps of paper in my sketchbook. But a pocket, come on people, can we get pockets in our sketchbooks, please? The outside of the sketchbook as well is not like the others. It has a fabric linen texture to it. And I thought that was going to be an issue when I was putting stickers on the front of the sketchbook. It was not. It was not an issue at all, actually, and I felt kind of stupid. We've now been through every single sketchbook that I've ever used. We've gotten to the part where I will be talking about features of the sketchbook. So if you're very particular about the type of paper, the type of cover you have, type of corners, There's timestamps. I will be talking about every single little stupid thing that you can think about. The first thing, and probably the most important thing to a lot of people, is the paper weight. Paper is measured in grams per square meter, abbreviated to GSM. Regular printer copy paper is usually like 90 to 100 GSM, and then the higher you get, the thicker the paper. Lower GSM paper usually means you'll see a lot more bleeding and ghosting, and it will not handle wet media as well as higher GSM papers will. The Pentalic Traveler Pocket Journal has 120 GSM paper. The Leuchtturm 1917 sketchbook has 150 GSM paper. The Moleskine Art sketchbooks have 165 GSM paper. The Moleskine watercolour sketchbook has 200 GSM paper. Royal Talens Art Creation has 140. Strathmore 500 Mixed Media Sketchbook has 190. And the hahnemüle Nostalgie Sketchbook has 190 GSM paper. Here is your ranking for thinnest to thickest paper weight. Next point, paper color. The Pentalic has proper white paper. The Leuchtturm also has white paper. The Moleskine has ivory paper. The Moleskine watercolor also has ivory paper, however this is whiter than the ivory paper of the regular Moleskine art sketchbooks. The Royal Talens Art Creation sketchbook has cream color paper, which is the most toned of all of the sketchbooks. Strathmore Mixed Media, white paper, and the hahnemüle also has white paper. Here's a list for you, ranking, again, you're welcome. Now I'll be going through how many pages the sketchbooks have. Usually a higher GSM paper means fewer pages because the paper is thicker. You choose how important the number of pages is to you. If you don't like buying new sketchbooks all the time, you're probably going to want one with a higher number of pages. If you like finishing the sketchbooks, a lower number of pages. It's pros and cons and personal preference at this point. The Pentalic has 160 pages. The Leuchtturm has 112. Moleskine art sketchbooks have 88 pages. The Moleskine watercolor sketchbook has 60 pages. The Royal Talens has 160 pages. The Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook is 64 pages. And the hahnemüle is 80 pages. Your list, my lord. Moving on to paper texture. The Pentalic has very smooth paper, probably the smoothest of all of them. It's very good for ink. I don't know if I would suggest it for things that need some texture to grip onto. The Leuchtturm, also very smooth paper. Moleskine, smooth paper. The Moleskine watercolor sketchbook has textured paper. It is cold press watercolor paper, which means that it is going to have more texture than a hot press watercolor paper. Royal Talens, smooth. The Strathmore does have smooth paper, however, it is more textured and has more of a tooth than the other sketchbooks. And the hahnemüle has smooth paper. Here's my ranking of the smoothness of the papers. You can't really trust me. I'm not a professional paper toucher, but I've done my best. If you care about the covers of the sketchbook, the Strathmore and the Pentalic are soft cover sketchbooks. The Leuchtturm, hahnemüle, Art Creation, and Moleskines are all hardcover sketchbooks. Although I am pretty sure that you can get a hardbound version of the Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook. The hahnemüle also isn't smooth like the others, it has a fabric texture. Some of the other little features, the Strathmore, hahnemüle, and Art Creation sketchbooks do not have a pocket in the front or the back, so if you like keeping scraps of paper or like swatch sheets with you, you're either gonna have to make your own pocket, attach like an envelope or something in the back, or you're gonna have to just put them in there and hope for the best. The Strathmore and the watercolor Moleskine do not have ribbons in them. If you like having that, to know where in the sketchbook you were working last, you're gonna have to attach your own. It's not difficult, you can just literally glue a piece of string into the back. But it's always nice to have it securely attached to the actual sketchbook. The regular Moleskine, Leuchtturm, Pentalic, hahnemüle, and Art Creation all have ribbons. The Strathmore and the hahnemüle do not have like a closing mechanism. There's no elastic, there's no way of keeping them closed. I'd say it's more of an issue with the Strathmore because this is soft cover, so this is gonna get banged up a lot more than this, which is at least hardcover. All the other sketchbooks have elastics to keep them closed. This is so niche, but the corners of the paper, the Strathmore and the hahnemüle both have sharp corners. If you look at the paper, this is what we're working with on both the Strathmore and the hahnemüle. All the other sketchbooks have rounded corners. If that matters to you, now you know. The corner of the paper does not matter to most people, but I am being thorough, all right? This is a dissertation. Another probably very important thing to most people is how the different sketchbooks and the paper handle different mediums. most sketchbooks will handle pencils, pen, ink fine. Like, it is not an issue. It gets wet when we're talking about markers and wet mediums like watercolor or other types of paint. The Pentalic has the thinnest and smoothest paper, which is nice for ink. But if you wet the pages intentionally, not like I did by accidentally putting it in a wet place, the pages will warp. When I was using this sketchbook, I wasn't using a lot of wet mediums. This is the only like watercolor thing I did in this sketchbook, and you can see it warps a little bit. The thickest mediums I used were like acrylic paint. You can see the bottom here has gotten wet and it has warped. Because the paper is so smooth, you might see more transfer. I haven't really struggled with it with this sketchbook, but something to maybe keep in mind. The Leuchtturm handles wet mediums pretty well. You do not need to add a lot of water before the paper starts warping though. On one side there's gouache and on the other I've used water. So you can see that the pages have warped slightly. The sketchbook has been stored flat and closed. It's probably straightened out the pages a bit. There is like slight buckling when I've used acrylics. However, when I used this, I was not really layering a lot of paint. There wasn't a lot of blending in water going on. So if that's the style you like working in, no issues. This is the only sketchbook that I would not recommend you using pencils and fine liners in. It obviously handles paint and wet mediums well because it is meant for paint and wet mediums. But when you're using fine liners, you're gonna have to press a bit to make sure that you get into the grooves of the texture of the paper. And if you use very thin fine liners, you do run the risk of like the lines being wobbly. You're also gonna have quite a bit of texture if you like using pencils on like large surfaces. Also, this is probably gonna soak up quite a bit of your alcohol markers if that's a medium you like using as well, because the paper's so thick, it's gonna just suck it up like a sponge. I obviously haven't tested the Royal Talens sketchbook a lot. It has like 2 pages where I've used acrylic paint and it's handled it fine. So I can't really speak on this. It doesn't have the thickest paper, so I don't know if I would recommend it for like watercolor. The Strathmore is a mixed media sketchbook and is made to handle mixed media. When I used water in this, it wasn't really buckling. You know, you're obviously gonna want to like clamp down your paper because the moment you add water, it will warp a bit, but it is made to handle different types of medium, including wet ones like acrylic paint, gouache, watercolor. It is also very nice if you like using pencils and other things. This also has the same issue that I feel like the watercolor might have, which is that it might suck up a lot of the ink from your alcohol markers if that's something you like using. I have no complaints about the hahnemüle and how it handles wet mediums. It doesn't have an elastic to keep it closed. So, you know, with the others that have that, it's going to press it down and like kind of flatten out the pages. This doesn't have that, so the buckling kind of just does what it wants to do. But because of the thickness of the paper, I haven't seen a lot of issues. Hi, just popping in because Lo a couple of days ago I forgot to mention that using paint markers in the Strathmore and the moleskine watercolor sketchbook is not a pleasant experience. What the fuck just happened? Because the paper is so rough, whenever I would use paint markers, I would have pilling, which is when the paper starts kind of ripping and creating small little balls. You don't want that, trust me. You also feel like you're ruining the felt tip markers because you're rubbing it against a rougher surface. So if you predominantly prefer using paint markers, I would steer away from the Strathmore and the watercolor sketchbook. You get away with using alcohol markers, but again, what the fuck is going on? But using paint markers, you're gonna want smoother paper. So just thought I'd mention it. I'll go through all of the sizes that I could find that was available for the different sketchbooks. The sizes for the Pentalic Traveler pocket journal on Amazon are 3x4, 4x6, 6x8 and 8x10 inches. The Leuchtturm sketchbook is available in a square, which is 22.5 by 22.5 centimeters. A medium landscape, which is 21 by 14.5 centimeters. This is a A5 medium, which is 14.5 by 21. And the A4 Plus Master is 22.5 by 31.5. The moleskine art sketchbooks is available in a pocket. This is 9 by 14. The medium is 11.5 by 17.5. The large is 13 by 21. There's also an A4, which is 21 by 29.7, and an A3, which is 29.7 by 42 centimeters. The moleskine watercolor sketchbook is available as a pocket, which is 9.14, a large 13 by 21, A4 and A3. You can also get the watercolor album, which is landscape oriented. The Royal Talens has a 9 by 14, a 12 by 12, 13 by 21, 14.8 by 21, and 21 by 29.7. As far as I could tell, there was only 2 different sizes of the Strathmore mixed media, which is 5.5 by 8 and 7.75 by 9.75. The hahnemüle is also available both in landscape and portrait. The A6 size is 10.5 by 14.8. The A5 is 14.8 by 21, and the A4 is 21 by 29.7. And the final thing we will be comparing are the prices of the sketchbooks. I am running out of battery, so let's see if I can finish this before it shuts off. It was kind of difficult with the pricing because they aren't all available everywhere. However, this gives you like a ballpark of what the prices of the sketchbooks are. The Pentalic on Amazon is $12.99 USD. The Leuchtturm is 310 Norwegian crowns, which is 29.23 USD on Pen Store. Could not finish before the battery ran out. Turns out, well, I was not done yapping before the battery ran out, so here we are. The reason why I'm using Pen Store prices is just that's where I buy my sketchbooks mostly. Where were we? Moleskine art sketchbook, large size, is 349 Norwegian crowns, which is 32.53 USD. The Royal Talens is 115 Norwegian crowns, which is 10.73 USD on Pen Store. So it is the most affordable of all of them. Now the Strathmore, when I looked this up on Amazon, it was 20.49 USD, which is about 224 Norwegian crowns. Isn't bad, but this is not available easily in Norway. So when I bought this, I had to pay nearly double. I paid 400 Norwegian crowns. So, you know, twice the price. That is why I haven't repurchased this, because I don't feel like shelling out that much money for 64 pages. I found a hahnemüle on Amazon for $22.95. However, where I bought it, it is $19.95 USD. So it's about 20 bucks, like around there. Your list. I'll also quickly mention 2 other very popular sketchbooks, which is the Nina Crossford sketchbook and the Render sketchbook. I have not tried either of those. I have looked at the Render. It is not easily available for me, and kind of like the Strathmore, I don't know if I want to pay twice the retail price just to get it so that I can test it and like maybe like it. We have reached the end, and I will give you my own personal ranking on what sketchbooks I prefer. On the bottom is the Art Creation and the Moleskine watercolor sketchbook. Honestly, Satan couldn't reach me, so he sent me these. I think this might actually be worse than this. As much shit as I've talked about this and how much I wish it died like a fiery death, I think I actually might dislike this more. And it's solely because I can't come up with like a good thing, like a thing that I like about this. It is just a sketchbook with paper that I don't particularly like. The best thing I can come up with for this is that it is easily available and affordable for people who just want a sketchbook. The Moleskine watercolor sketchbook is probably a very good sketchbook for people who either paint a lot or like a lot of texture in their paper. I just happen to not be that person at all. 5th place is the Moleskine large sketchbook. The 2 things that I really don't like about this is the dimensions of it. It feels awkward. It feels too thin. It feels like a regular sketchbook got its hands on Ozempic. I'm also just not a huge fan of the ivory paper. 4th place is the Moleskine pocket sketchbook. It is a bit too small for me. It is nice if you just want to get through a sketchbook, and I did really enjoy drawing at this size because it is easy to fill out. I don't want to fall into the trap where I draw way too small. And when you have a really small sketchbook, you have a tendency to draw very small because, you know, you have limited size of paper. I've noticed that when I draw very small, it is easy for me to not notice mistakes I'm doing. If I was to draw it on a bigger scale, I'll see things and I'm like, oh yeah, that's off. But when it's this small, you know, you can kind of get away with mucking things up. And I don't want to run the risk of doing that. In third place, we have the Moleskine medium-sized sketchbook. This is my perfect small-sized sketchbook. The pocket gets a bit too small. This is big enough that you have wiggle room and enough space to actually do bigger drawings, but not big enough that you feel overwhelmed. And it is easy to fill up. It's easy and nice to just take with you. I'd actually forgotten about this, so we are going to be rearranging the final ranking. This might come in like a 5th place with the Moleskine, like depending on the day. I enjoy the paper color and I enjoy that it's very smooth. I also prefer the dimensions of this to the Moleskine. Not a huge fan of the thin paper. It's just too thin for me. I also prefer hardcover. This is bendy. All right, 2nd place, Strathmore. The paper in this is brilliant. That is not enough to weigh up for the lack of an elastic, a ribbon, and a pocket in the sketchbook. I also can't really fault Strathmore, but like I'm pissed off at the price. That I have to pay twice the retail price for this. Not worth it. I also don't necessarily care too much about, you know, it getting banged up, but it's not as nice to look at when it's got dents all over it. And then in shared 1st place, we might have guessed it, the hahnemüle and the leuchtturm. The thing is, I can't choose between these because I prefer the paper in this, but the design of the leuchtturm. If the leuchtturm paper was 190 GSM or even 180 like they used to have, I would not be buying any other type of sketchbook. I would be sticking to my leuchtturm. The fact that this doesn't have a pocket and an elastic is what really drags it down for me. I'll also be like real specific and say that I prefer the corners, the corners on this to this. This also has 2 ribbons. If that's important to you, it's not necessarily important to me, but I also like the design of the ribbons on this more than this. So there you have it. My pick for the best sketchbooks is the Leuchtturm 1917 and the hahnemüle Nostalgie sketchbook. I have now been filming for an hour and a half. Oh my god. If you've tried any of these sketchbooks, I would actually really love to hear what you liked and disliked about them. And if you have a different type of sketchbook that you prefer, I'm always looking for recommendations and opinions. I hope this video was helpful for someone, because this is an insane amount of time spent talking about paper. Feel free to subscribe if you want to stick around for more adventures with me, your host, Loy.